Take your daughter and disappear, my husband roared in the courtroom, pointing his finger at me like I was some kind of stray dog he'd finally decided to kick out. His voice echoed against those cold walls, and for a second, even the judge looked up over his glasses. Lily squeezed my hand so tight her little knuckles went white, and all I could think was, good Lord, after 25 years, this is how he talks to the mother of his child. My name is Evelyn May Carter, I'm 69 years old, and I live in Asheville, North Carolina. For 38 years, I was an English teacher at the local high school, the kind of teacher kids came back to visit years later, with babies on their hips and stories about how life turned out. I corrected essays, dried tears in the hallway, and sat through more parent-teacher conferences than I can count. I thought I knew a thing or two about people. But sweetheart, nothing in all those years prepared me for the day my own husband treated me like I was nothing more than a piece of trash to be taken out. Before I go any further, you just listen to me now, honey. Do me a little favor. Tell me in the comments what city you're watching this from. I want to know how far my voice is traveling, how many kitchens, bedrooms, cars, and living rooms my story is reaching. It helps this old heart of mine to know I'm not talking into the void. Tom was standing there in one of his fancy suits, the dark blue one he always wore when he wanted to impress somebody. He had that same smooth smile he used at church potlucks and charity dinners, but his eyes, his eyes were full of pure contempt. Your Honor, he said, with that fake respectful tone. She's unstable. She fills Lily's head with nonsense. I'm just asking for what's best for my daughter. If you had walked in right then, you'd think I was the one who had done something terrible. That was always his gift, you know, looking like the good guy while he twisted the knife behind your back. Lily leaned closer to me and whispered, Mom, I don't want to live with him. Her voice shook. She was 13, but in that moment she sounded like a little girl again, the same little girl who used to crawl into my bed during thunderstorms and tuck her icy feet under my legs. I wanted to pull her into my arms and walk right out of that courthouse. But there we were, trapped in that room, with lawyers in pressed suits and files stacked like bricks around us, and a judge who'd never seen Tom slam a door so hard the picture frames fell. Mrs. Carter, my attorney, Jonathan Pierce, put a gentle hand on my shoulder. Just breathe. Jonathan had known my daddy back when Asheville was smaller and everybody knew everybody else's business. He knew more than Tom ever imagined. I remember catching his eyes for a second, and there was something there, a quiet message. Let him talk. Let him dig his own grave. So I pressed my lips together and stayed silent while Tom painted me as some hysterical old woman who didn't understand modern parenting. I provided for this family, Tom went on, his voice getting louder, like he was playing to a crowd. I built our life. I paid for the house, the cars, the vacations. She stayed home, Your Honor. She doesn't know anything about money. I'm the one who can give Lily stability. Back in my day, we used to say some folks could lie so smooth, you almost admired the effort. That was Tom. Every word was like butter on toast, fake sweet, but if you looked closely, it was burning at the edges. Now, I could have stood up right then and there and told that judge the truth. I could have told him about the nights I graded papers until midnight while Tom was out networking with his secretary. I could have told him about the bank statements I found, the ones with withdrawals I never agreed to. I could have told him whose daddy really paid for that house we were fighting over. But I didn't. I sat there with my hands folded in my lap, my back straight, and my mind already 3 steps ahead. I wasn't that weak, confused woman Tom thought I was. I was just tired of shouting to people who didn't want to hear. Mrs. Carter, do you have anything to say? The judge finally asked, looking down at me. His voice wasn't unkind, but it wasn't warm either. It was the voice of a man who'd heard 1,000 broken families and just wanted to move on to the next case. I looked over at Tom, at that smug tilt of his chin, and then down at Lily, whose eyes were swimming with tears she was trying so hard not to let fall. My heart ached, but there was a calm under all that pain, like the still bottom of a stormy lake. Yes, Your Honor, I said softly. My voice didn't shake. That surprised even me. I just want it on record that I love my daughter more than anything on this earth, and I will do whatever I have to do to protect her, even if that means disappearing. I saw Tom's eyebrow twitch at that last word. He thought he owned the word disappear. He thought he was the one sending us away. Men like him never imagine they're the ones about to lose everything. The judge made his ruling. There were terms and documents and conditions, but the main thing is this. He granted shared custody, but allowed Lily to stay with me for now, as long as I didn't interfere with Tom's relationship with his daughter. That's what the paper said. Such a neat little sentence for such a messy reality. Tom clenched his jaw, clearly expecting full control, full victory. But he pasted on that plastic smile and nodded like a gracious loser. Oh, he hated looking like he'd lost anything at all. Afterward, in the hallway, he leaned in close, so close I could smell the expensive cologne he always wore to big moments. "You think you won something in there, Evelyn?" he hissed through his teeth. "You didn't. Take your daughter and vanish. I don't want to see your face again. I'll make your life so small you'll beg to come back." He smiled then, that slow, cruel smile I knew too well. "And when you do, I'll make sure you come back on your knees. You know, honey, there's a special kind of chill that runs through you when someone you once loved talks to you like that. Not the chill of fear. Not anymore. It's more like recognition. Like when you finally turn the light on in a dark room and see the shape that's been there all along." I looked him straight in the eye and said, "Bless your heart, Tom. You really don't know me at all, do you?" That wiped the smile off his face for half a second. And that half second was enough for me. Lily and I walked out of that courthouse with a single suitcase and a folder of papers Jonathan had tucked into my handbag before we left. "Don't lose these," he'd whispered. "We'll talk soon." I didn't look at them right away. My mind was too full of Lily's trembling shoulders and where we were going to sleep that night. We ended up at a small motel off the highway, the kind with thin walls and a buzzing neon sign that flickered "vacancy" in tired red letters. Lily sat on the bed, staring at her shoes. "Mom," she finally said without looking up, "did we do something wrong?" That broke me in a way Tom's words never could. "No, sweetheart," I said, sitting beside her and pulling her into my arms. "We didn't do anything wrong. Sometimes people show you who they really are, that's all. And when they do, you have to decide who you're going to be." She sniffed, wiped her face, and whispered, "I just want to be with you." That was all I needed to hear. That night, while Lily slept curled up next to me, I finally opened the folder Jonathan had given me. The motel lamp cast a weak yellow light over the papers. Old signatures, legal seals, my father's name, my name. Words like sole beneficiary and irrevocable and full ownership jumped out at me. My heart started pounding, but not from fear this time, from something else, something like power, quiet, patient power that had been sitting there for years, just waiting for its moment. Tom thought the judge's ruling was the end of our story. For him, it was just paperwork, another chance to show off his sacrifice as a father. What he didn't know, what he had never bothered to ask, was that before he ever slid that ring on my finger, before he ever moved his clothes into my closet, my father had already made a decision about who truly owned the life Tom was so proud of. And those papers were still very much alive. 3 months later, when Jonathan finally picked up the phone and called Tom to review some documents related to the estate of the late Mr. Henry Walker, my daddy, Tom answered with that same arrogant confidence he wore in the courtroom. He had no idea that, with just a few sentences, Jonathan was about to pull the floor right out from under his feet. And sweetheart, the look on Tom's face when he finally heard what was in that will? Well, that's where things really start to get interesting. When Lily and I woke up the next morning in that little roadside motel, the world felt strangely quiet, like the air itself was holding its breath. She was still curled into me, her hair a mess against my shoulder, and for a moment I let myself pretend it was just another road trip, one of those little adventures we used to take in the summer when Tom was too busy to join us. But then reality settled in. The courthouse, the shouting, the look in Tom's eyes. and my stomach tightened like someone had tied a rope around it. I slipped out of bed carefully so I wouldn't wake her, put on a pot of that weak motel coffee, and sat at the little table with those papers Jonathan gave me. I didn't dare fully understand them yet. I wasn't ready for that. Instead, I just stared at the signatures, tracing my daddy's handwriting with a fingertip, and wondered what on earth he had known, or feared, that made him write something so final, so absolute. When Lily finally stirred awake, she looked around the room with those wide eyes of hers. "Are we going home today?" she asked, hugging her blanket to her chest. God, that question hit hard. "Not yet, sweetheart," I said softly. "We need to figure out where we're going to stay for a while." She didn't argue. She was old enough to understand that home wasn't safe with her father right now. She just nodded and pressed her face against my arm. For all her quietness, Lily was brave. The kind of brave that comes from being forced to grow up around someone unpredictable. That kind of bravery isn't loud. It's steady, like a heartbeat. I called Jonathan as soon as Lily stepped into the bathroom to get ready. He answered on the second ring, sounding tired but alert, like he'd been expecting my call. "Evelyn," he said, "I assume you've looked at the documents." I swallowed. I glanced. "Jonathan, why didn't my father ever tell me?" There was a pause on the line. I could almost hear him choosing his words carefully. "Your father suspected Tom would try to take advantage of you someday. He saw the signs before you did. He asked me to keep the paperwork safe until it was needed." Evelyn, that day has come. My blood went cold. I wanted to deny it, to insist my daddy had been wrong about Tom, but after yesterday's courtroom scene, there was no denying anything anymore. "We need to meet," Jonathan continued. "Privately. Tom might try something now that the custody hearing didn't go his way." I felt a pulse of fear, quick and sharp. "What do you mean, try something?" His voice softened. "Men like Tom don't take loss well, especially not loss of control. Just be careful." I thanked him, hung up, and sat there for a long moment. Those words echoed in my mind. Loss of control. That was what this had always been about. Not love, not family. Control. We checked out of the motel quietly, Lily carrying her little backpack and me holding our single suitcase. I didn't want to use a credit card Tom could track, so I paid with cash, something I rarely did. My hands shook slightly as I counted the bills. Not from fear, but from the sudden realization of how much of my life Tom had monitored without me ever noticing. He had always insisted on managing our finances because numbers stressed me out. You know, honey, I taught teenagers for nearly 4 decades. Numbers weren't the thing stressing me out. We drove into Asheville slowly, sticking to the back roads. Lily stared out the window at the mountains rising in soft blue layers, her face unreadable. I reached over and squeezed her hand. "We're going to be okay," I said. She nodded, but I knew she wasn't convinced yet. Kids her age think adults are supposed to have all the answers, and here I was, doing my best to fold my panic into neat little squares and tuck it away where she couldn't see it. I didn't drive home. I couldn't. Instead, I headed to a small cabin on the outskirts of town, a little rental that belonged to a retired couple I used to teach with. They were snowbirds, somewhere in Florida this time of year, and had once told me, "Evelyn, if you ever need a quiet place to breathe, you just give us a call." Well, Lord knows I needed a quiet place now. I left a message explaining I'd pay weekly rent and slipped the key from the lockbox. The cabin was small, cozy, with wood-paneled walls and the faint smell of cedar. Lily sat on the couch and hugged a pillow to her chest. I let her settle before stepping outside to breathe the crisp mountain air. It felt like my first real breath in days. Later that afternoon, Jonathan arrived at the cabin. He stood on the porch, holding a briefcase and wearing that serious expression that told me this wasn't going to be an easy conversation. Lily was in the back room drawing, so we sat at the tiny kitchen table. "Evelyn," he began, "your father's will is airtight. I made sure of it. Tom has no legal claim to the house, the land, or the assets. They are entirely yours." I felt a tremor run through my chest. "But if that's true," I whispered, "then why hasn't Tom found out?" Jonathan leaned back. Because your father filed the will in a way that only triggers on certain conditions, one of them being a divorce filing or custody dispute. My breath caught. So, yesterday's hearing. He nodded. Activated everything. That's when I realized something that made my whole body go cold. Tom had no idea yet. He still believed that house was half his. He still believed the bank accounts were half his. He still believed he held all the cards. And Jonathan's call, the one scheduled in a few weeks, would be the moment it all unraveled. Evelyn, Jonathan continued, lowering his voice, I need you to understand something. Tom may react badly when he finds out. You need to prepare yourself and protect Lily. I nodded slowly. My mind wasn't racing. It was sharpening, like steel pulled through a flame. That night, after Lily fell asleep in the small twin bed, I sat alone on the porch, listening to the wind move through the pines. I thought about the years I'd spent trying to keep the peace, trying to be the reasonable one, the calm one, the understanding wife. I remembered every slammed door, every cold shoulder, every quiet accusation meant to make me doubt myself. And for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel afraid. I felt ready. As I stood to go back inside, my phone buzzed. A text message from Tom. Just 2 words. Where are you? But it was the second message, arriving just 10 seconds later, that made my heart stop. You can't hide from me. And that, sweetheart, that was when everything truly began. When I read those words on the screen, you can't hide from me. It felt like someone had reached through my chest and squeezed my heart with a cold hand. For a moment, I just stared at the glowing letters, the little gray bubble still sitting there like a threat that hadn't finished unfolding. The porch light buzzed softly overhead, moths tapping against the glass, and the rest of the world was quiet. Inside, Lily's soft breathing drifted from the small bedroom. Out there, it was just me, my phone, and the ghost of a man who never wanted to let go of anything he thought he owned, including us. I didn't answer. Not right away. Back in my day, we used to say not every knock on the door deserves to be opened. The same goes for messages. I locked the phone screen, took a long breath, and reminded myself, he doesn't know where you are. He doesn't know what you know. And he sure as heaven doesn't know what's written in that will. Fear was there, yes, humming in the background, but it wasn't in charge anymore. I went back inside, double-checked the locks on the doors and windows, and then sat on the couch with the folder of documents resting on my lap like a shield. The next morning, Lily noticed something in my face. Kids always do. You look tired, Mom, she said, pouring cereal into a chipped bowl. Did you sleep? I forced a little smile. Not much, sweetheart. Grown-up brain doesn't have an off switch sometimes. She gave me a small half-smile of her own, the kind that said she knew I was downplaying it, but would let me have my dignity. Do I have to go to school today? She asked. That question hurt too. Her life was built around routines, bus stops and lockers and lunch trays. Not today, I said. We need to get some things settled first. She nodded slowly, like she was bracing for impact. Tom's shadow reached long, even from a distance. Around mid-morning, I sat at the kitchen table with my phone and finally typed back, Lily and I are safe. That's all you need to know. I stared at the message for a long moment, then hit send. 3 dots appeared right away. He'd been waiting. Safe? His reply came. You think you're safe because the judge gave you a few crumbs? Don't get too comfortable, Evelyn. That house, that life, it's all mine. You and your little lawyer friend can't change that. I almost laughed, not because it was funny, but because of how certain he sounded. How sure he was that the world still worked according to his rules. I typed, erased, and then finally wrote, You've always underestimated me, Tom. Maybe that's your biggest mistake. This time, there were no 3 dots, just silence. Later, Jonathan called to check in. I told him about the messages. He's rattled, Jonathan said, which means he's going to push harder. Don't engage more than you have to. Every word you say could end up in a courtroom transcript someday. I sighed. You know, honey, I spent my whole life teaching kids how to use their words. I never thought I'd have to treat my own husband like a hostile witness. Jonathan chuckled softly. You're handling this better than most, Evelyn. But remember, we're not just playing defense. You've got more power here than he realizes. I looked at the will again, at my father's looping signature. I'm starting to feel that, I whispered. The first few days in the cabin were a strange blend of peace and tension. On one hand, the quiet was healing. No slamming doors, no raised voices, no walking on eggshells. Lily and I cooked simple meals, took short walks near the trees, and tried to build a new rhythm. On the other hand, every time a car passed on the dirt road, my shoulders tensed. Every time my phone buzzed, my heart jumped. Tom didn't text again, but that silence felt thick, like the pause before a storm. One afternoon, Lily and I were sitting on the floor with a pile of old photos. I'd grabbed the box from the house weeks before things exploded, like some part of me already knew I needed to save our memories. You looked different here, Lily said, holding up a picture of me in my 30s, hair big and curly, smile wide and unguarded. I studied that woman. Yeah, I said softly. I did. She frowned. You were happier? I thought about it for a moment. I was lighter, before I started carrying someone else's anger on my back every day. Lily bit her lip. You don't have to carry it anymore, right? I looked at her then, really looked. That's the plan, I said. And for the first time, I meant it. Jonathan came by again at the end of the week. He spread more papers across the table. Deeds, account statements, letters from my father. Evelyn, I need to walk you through exactly what you have, he said. Because sooner or later, Tom is going to try to make moves, and you need to understand what's actually his and what never was. We went line by line. The house, bought with money from my father's estate, solely in my name. The land around it, inherited from my grandparents, never transferred. The joint savings account? In reality, an account my father had set up with me years before, with Tom only added as a signatory for convenience. Legally, mine. Good Lord, I whispered halfway through. He's been strutting around like a king in a kingdom that doesn't even belong to him. Jonathan nodded. Exactly. And when he finds out, he's likely to say you tricked him, that you hid this. But the truth is he never asked. And the law doesn't reward willful ignorance. Something shifted inside me as I listened. All those years Tom had used money as a leash, threatening to cut me off, reminding me how dependent I was. And here I was, realizing the leash had never actually been around my neck. It had just been hanging in front of my face, and I'd believed him. Why didn't my father tell me everything? I asked quietly. Jonathan sighed. He did, in his way. He tried to warn you about Tom. You were in love. You didn't want to hear it. So he did the only thing he could. He protected you on paper in case your heart wouldn't let you protect yourself. My eyes burned, but I swallowed the tears. Bless his heart, I murmured. He knew me better than I knew myself. That night, after Jonathan left, I sat at the tiny table with a pen and a yellow notepad. I wrote out a list, old teacher style. Protect Lily, emotionally and legally. Do not go back to the house alone. Talk to the bank with Jonathan present. Prepare for Tom's reaction when he finds out. Decide what kind of justice I want. Not revenge, but justice. I stared at that last line for a long time. Revenge is loud and messy. Justice is quieter, but it lasts longer. I didn't want to scream at Tom or throw his clothes on the lawn or key his precious truck. I wanted something deeper. I wanted the truth laid bare. I wanted him to stand in the ruins of the life he tried to build on top of my back and realize he was the one who set the fire. A few days later, I had to take Lily into town to pick up some clothes and school supplies. We couldn't keep living out of one suitcase. I kept my hat low and my coat buttoned, but in a town like Asheville, you can't stay a secret for long. At the grocery store, I heard my name whispered more than once. Is that Evelyn? I heard they separated. Tom said she's unstable, poor thing. I felt every word like a tiny sting, but I held my head high. Folks only know the story they've been told. They hadn't heard mine yet. As we walked back to the car, groceries in hand, I saw it. Tom's truck, parked across the lot. My heart skipped. He was leaning against the side, arms crossed, watching us. Lily froze. Mom, she whispered, he's here. I put the bags in the trunk slowly, buying myself a few extra seconds to breathe. Then I turned around and looked him dead in the eye. "Well, I'll be darned," he said, pushing off the truck and walking toward us with that lazy smile. "Didn't take you long to crawl back into town, did it?" I stepped in front of Lily, not in fear, but in habit, protective. "We're buying groceries, Tom. Not crawling anywhere." His eyes narrowed. "You're still using my money, I see." I felt that old, familiar spark of anger, but this time it didn't swallow me. It focused me. "Careful," I said quietly. "You keep saying my about things that don't belong to you, and one day that word is going to choke you." He took another step closer, dropping his voice so only I could hear. "You think that little lawyer and those dusty old papers are going to save you?" he hissed. "You have no idea what I'm capable of, Evelyn." I smiled then. It surprised even me how calm it felt. "Oh, I think I do," I said. "But I don't think you have any idea what's coming." He scoffed, turned back toward his truck, then paused, glancing over his shoulder. "Enjoy your little cabin life," he said, "because once I'm done with the paperwork, you won't have a roof over your head. Not you, not Lily." I watched him drive away, dust kicking up behind his tires. My hands were steady, my voice was steady. But inside, something heavy clicked into place. Because what Tom didn't know was that at that very moment, Jonathan was sitting in a bank office across town, sliding my father's will across a polished wooden desk, and setting in motion a chain of events that would tear Tom's perfect image to pieces. And, sweetheart, the first person to feel that earthquake wasn't Tom. It was someone much closer to him. The day after we saw Tom in that grocery store parking lot, the air around the cabin felt heavier, like a storm was sitting somewhere beyond the ridge, waiting for the right moment to roll in. Lily kept close to me, not clingy, but watchful in that quiet way of hers. She'd always been observant, a child who read rooms the way some people read books. Every sound outside made her glance toward the window. "Is he coming here?" she asked once, her voice barely above a whisper. "No," I told her gently, brushing a strand of hair from her face. "He doesn't know where we are." But even as I said it, a small part of me tightened, because Tom wasn't the kind of man who let things go easily, especially not being challenged, especially not being wrong. Jonathan stopped by again that afternoon. The folders under his arm were thicker now, filled with copies of legal notices, property records, and bank statements. He spread them carefully across the table like puzzle pieces. "Evelyn," he said, taking a slow breath, "I need you to be ready for a reaction when Tom realizes he's not the financial victim he's planning to act like." I crossed my arms. "He's been rehearsing that role for years." Jonathan nodded. "But now he's going to perform it for the public. He'll play the wounded husband, the abandoned father. He'll tell everyone you tricked him, that you hid money from him, that you stole what was rightfully his." I let out a humorless laugh. Good Lord. The man can't even say the word responsibility without choking, but he'll scream victim just fine. Jonathan leaned forward. "He'll scream it loudly, Evelyn, and he'll make sure the whole town hears, but you need to stay calm, stay steady, because when the truth comes out, it won't be loud like his lies, it'll be heavy and final." I looked down at the papers, at all the signatures and seals, and felt something settle inside me like a stone dropping to the bottom of a riverbed. "I'm not running," I said quietly. "Not anymore." Jonathan gave a soft, warm nod. "That's exactly what your father hoped for." Later that evening, Lily sat at the small kitchen table doing homework. Jonathan had helped arrange temporary schooling while we sorted out the mess, and I stepped outside for some air. The mountains were fading into that deep blue that comes just before the sky fully goes dark, and the first stars were beginning to poke through. I wrapped my sweater tighter around me and breathed in the scent of pine. For a moment, it almost felt peaceful, but then a car engine rumbled in the distance. My whole body tensed. I went perfectly still, listening. The sound grew louder, closer, turning down the dirt road that led toward the cabin. My heart thudded in my chest. I stepped quietly back inside, locking the door behind me. "Lily," I said softly, "go to the bedroom for a minute." She didn't ask why. She just went. The headlights washed across the front windows. A shadow passed behind the curtains, but instead of Tom's truck, the engine cut off, and I heard a car door slam. Then footsteps. Firm, deliberate. A knock followed. 3 slow, heavy raps. My breath caught. For a second, the house was completely silent except for the ticking of the wall clock. Then a voice. Not Tom's. A woman's. Mrs. Carter? It's me. Grace. Grace Turner. The wife of Tom's business partner. A woman who had always smiled politely at barbecues and holiday dinners, but never seemed fully comfortable around Tom. A woman whose eyes always darted between him and her husband, like she was waiting for a shoe to drop. I cracked the door open, but kept the chain on. She looked exhausted. Pale face, hair pulled into a hurried ponytail, dark circles under her eyes. "Grace?" I said, confused. "What are you doing here?" She pressed a hand to her chest. "Please, can I come in? I need to talk to you." She glanced over her shoulder like she was afraid someone had followed her. I unhooked the chain and let her inside. She stepped in, wringing her hands. "I'm sorry to just show up like this. I didn't know where else to go." I motioned for her to sit. "Grace, honey, you look like you've seen a ghost." She swallowed hard. "I might have." Before I could ask anything, she leaned forward, lowering her voice even though we were alone. "It's Tom." My muscles tightened. "What about him?" She looked at me with wide, frightened eyes. "He came to our house last night, unannounced, drunk, furious." I felt my stomach drop. "What did he want?" Grace's voice trembled. "He kept talking about you, about losing control, about being betrayed. He said you were hiding something from him, something big, and that he would burn everything to the ground before he let you take anything from him." I stared at her, my hands slowly curling into fists. "Good Lord," I whispered. "He's unraveling." Grace nodded, tears welling. My husband tried to calm him down, but Tom just got angrier. He said he wasn't going to let you or Jonathan humiliate him in this town. He said you'd regret crossing him. My breath turned cold. Grace wiped her eyes and continued. "I'm telling you this because I'm scared. Not just for you, for Lily, for all of us. Tom isn't thinking clearly, and when a man like him loses control," she shook her head, "he becomes dangerous." I sat back, feeling the weight of every word she'd said. The danger wasn't theoretical anymore. It was real, pressing up against our walls, breathing down our necks. "Thank you for telling me," I said softly. "Truly." She nodded weakly. "I don't know what he's planning, but he kept saying something about fixing things before the next court date. I don't know what that means. The next court date, custody review, financial disclosures." Tom thought he could bluff his way through everything. But when Jonathan submitted the updated documents, the will, the property transfers, the truth would hit him like a truck. And now he was lashing out blindly. Grace stood, smoothing her coat with shaking hands. "I should go before my husband worries, but please, Evelyn, be careful." I walked her to the door and watched her drive away, her taillights disappearing into the dark. I locked the door the moment she was gone. My hands were steady, my breathing wasn't. I went to Lily's room. She was sitting on the bed, hugging her knees. "Was that Dad?" she whispered. "No," I said gently, sitting beside her. "But someone came to warn us about him." Her lip trembled. "He's not going to hurt us, right?" I wrapped her in my arms. "No, sweetheart. I won't let that happen. I promise you." But promises feel different when you're making them in the middle of a growing storm. Later that night, after Lily fell asleep, I stepped out onto the porch again. The mountains were nothing but a dark outline against the sky. The cabin felt too small, too vulnerable. I tried to calm my thoughts, to focus on the next steps Jonathan had laid out, to remember that the law was on my side. But then my phone buzzed. A new message. This one wasn't from Tom. It was from an unknown number. It said only, "You should have stayed quiet." And that was when I realized someone else had started watching us. When I read that message, "You should have stayed quiet," a coldness spread through my body so fast it felt like my bones turned to ice. I stood there on the porch with the phone in my hand, the night air brushing against my skin. But the chill I felt wasn't from the wind. It was the kind of cold that comes when you realize the walls around you aren't as solid as you hoped, when you understand that someone out there not only knows you left, but resents that you did. I stepped back inside, locking the door with slow, deliberate movements. My hands didn't shake. Fear wasn't taking me this time. Vigilance was. I pulled the curtains closed in the living room, checking each latch on the windows as I moved. Lily's soft breathing from the bedroom grounded me for a moment, reminding me exactly who I needed to protect. When I reached the small kitchen, I dialed Jonathan without thinking. He answered on the first ring. "Evelyn? It's late. Is everything all right?" I let out a slow breath. I got a message, not from Tom. It said I should have stayed quiet. There was a short silence. The kind that means a person is choosing their words carefully. "Did you save it?" he asked. "Yes." "Good. Don't respond. Forward it to me. And, Evelyn, this might not be Tom directly. It could be someone connected to him." My stomach tightened. "Someone like who?" Jonathan sighed. "Business associates. Friends he drinks with. People he's been venting to about the separation. A man like Tom doesn't crumble quietly. He makes noise, and he pulls people into the mess." I sent him a screenshot. A minute later, he called back. "It's a prepaid number. Untraceable." I closed my eyes. "So someone wants to scare us." "Yes," Jonathan said. "And that means you're doing something right. People don't try to intimidate those who aren't a threat." I leaned against the counter. "But this isn't a game. Lily is here." "I know, and I'm going to take care of this. First thing tomorrow, I'm filing for a protection order. Not against Tom yet, but against any harassment tied to the case. It's a start." After we hung up, I sat at the table for a long time, staring at the dark window. I wasn't helpless. I wasn't alone. But I was tired. Tired in a way that went deep, like roots. Still, the exhaustion didn't weigh me down. It steadied me. Because running wouldn't save Lily. Hiding wouldn't stop Tom. Only truth would. The next morning, Lily sat quietly at the breakfast table, tracing circles in her oatmeal with a spoon. "Mom," she whispered, "do you ever wish you stayed, with him?" The spoon slipped from my fingers and clinked against the bowl. I looked at her gently. "Why would you think that, sweetheart?" She shrugged, eyes still low. "Because everything feels hard now. And when things are hard, people say it's better to stay together." Good Lord, that was something she must have heard at school. Or worse, from Tom. I reached across the table and touched her hand. "Lily, staying somewhere painful doesn't make you strong. Leaving does. Staying in the dark doesn't teach you anything. Walking toward the light does. And we're walking, honey. It's messy, but it's forward." She nodded, tears pressing at the corners of her eyes. I didn't push her. Kids deserve space to feel. Later that day, Jonathan called again. "Evelyn, I've filed the emergency motion. We should hear back by tomorrow afternoon." I thanked him, but he cleared his throat, the universal sign for "there's more." I also got a call from the bank this morning. Tom was there. My heartbeat kicked up. "What was he doing?" "Trying to access your accounts. He claimed you were hiding marital assets." I let out a dry laugh. "Of course he did." "The bank froze the accounts temporarily," Jonathan continued, "but only until the will documents finish processing. Once that's complete, everything goes back under your sole authority." I rubbed my forehead. "So he's already scrambling." "Desperate," Jonathan corrected. "He knows he's losing ground." I didn't say it, but part of me hoped he felt the crack beneath his feet, the same crack he'd made me stand on for years while he yelled, blamed, dismissed. Now the ground was shifting under him, not me. That afternoon, Lily and I took a walk behind the cabin. The leaves had started turning, gold, bronze, fading red. The air smelled like pine needles and damp earth. Lily walked beside me quietly, kicking a small pine cone down the path. "Do you think Dad hates us?" she whispered suddenly. I stopped walking. "Look at me, sweetheart." She lifted her gaze. "Your father doesn't hate you. He's angry because he's losing control. But his anger is not your fault, or your responsibility." She blinked up at me, and for a moment she was that little girl who used to run to me with scraped knees. "Okay," she said softly. But her eyes still carried the question. The one children are too afraid to ask out loud. Does he hate you, Mom? When we got back to the cabin, a truck we didn't recognize was parked on the side of the dirt road. Old gray rusted along the bottom. It wasn't running, but something in the air shifted the moment I saw it. A wrongness. A tension like static. Lily clutched my sleeve. Mom, whose truck is that? I swallowed, keeping my voice calm. I don't know, honey. Let's just go inside. We stepped through the door, and I locked it behind us. I peeked through the corner of the curtain. The truck door opened. A man stepped out. Tall. Hood pulled up. Hands in his pockets. He stood still, watching the cabin. Watching us. He didn't move toward the door. He didn't call out. He just stared. The kind of stare that doesn't need words to be threatening. My phone buzzed. One new message. From the same unknown number. He's closer than you think. And that, sweetheart, that was the moment I realized this wasn't just Tom losing control. Someone else had stepped into the shadows with him, and they were getting bolder. When I saw that man step out of the truck and just stand there, watching the cabin like it was some kind of stage and we were the show, every old instinct of mine screamed to panic. But I didn't. I put a hand on Lily's shoulder and guided her away from the window, my voice steady even though my heart was pounding like a drum in my chest. Go to the bedroom, sweetheart, I said softly. Close the curtains and stay away from the window. She looked up at me, eyes wide. Is it Dad? No, I answered, and that much was true. But whoever he is, he doesn't get to scare us. She hesitated, then nodded and slipped down the hall. I stood by the wall, peeking just enough to keep the man in view without letting him see my full silhouette. He didn't move, hands still in his pockets, head tilted slightly like he was taking notes. I could feel his gaze on the cabin like pressure. Back in my day, we used to say that some folks don't need to talk to be loud. His silence was shouting. I picked up my phone, dialed Jonathan, and put it on speaker so I could keep watching. He answered quickly. Evelyn? There's a man outside, I said quietly. Gray truck, just standing there. And I just got another text. He's closer than you think. Jonathan swore under his breath. Call the sheriff, Evelyn, right now. Don't confront him. Don't go outside. I'm on my way too, but get law enforcement there first. I hung up, then dialed the county sheriff. My voice stayed calm as I explained what was happening. The unknown truck, the man watching the cabin, the threatening messages. I could hear the dispatcher typing. Units are in the area, she said. Keep your doors locked. Don't engage. Someone will be there shortly. I thanked her, ended the call, and finally allowed myself one long, shaking exhale. Not from fear, but from the sheer tension of holding myself so still. Minutes stretched like hours. The man didn't move. I thought about all the times Tom had insisted I was too dramatic when I told him something didn't feel right. I thought about how often I'd swallowed my instincts just to keep the peace. Not anymore. You just listen to me now, honey. When your gut talks, you better pay attention. After what felt like an eternity but was probably 10 minutes, I saw dust rising at the far end of the road. 2 sheriff's vehicles approached, their lights flashing softly in the late afternoon light. The man finally moved, not toward them, but back to his truck. He climbed in with casual, unhurried movements, like he'd just finished a picnic. By the time the deputies reached the cabin, he'd turned his truck around and was rolling slowly back up the road. One of the deputies, a broad-shouldered woman with her hair pulled into a tight bun, knocked at the door. I opened it just enough to greet her. Mrs. Carter? She asked. I'm Deputy Harris. We got your call. Behind her, another deputy was already walking back toward the road, taking down the license plate as the truck disappeared. Come in, I said, stepping aside. Lily peeked down the hall, and I gave her a little nod to let her know it was all right. I told them everything, the messages, the truck, the man just standing there. I didn't dramatize it. I didn't need to. The facts were unsettling enough on their own. Deputy Harris took notes, her brow furrowed. Given your active court situation, she said, and the messages you've received, this could be considered harassment and intimidation. We'll file a report and put a patrol on this road for the next few nights. I nodded slowly. Do you think it was Tom? She hesitated. We can't say that yet, but the plate will help us figure out who the truck belongs to. The other deputy came back in. Got the tag, he said. Belongs to a man named Dale Whitaker. My stomach twisted. That name wasn't familiar to me, but that didn't mean anything. Tom knew plenty of people I'd never met. Does that name ring a bell? Harris asked. I shook my head. Not to me. She slipped her notebook into her pocket. We'll look into it. In the meantime, keep your phone close, and if you see that truck again, call us immediately. Don't assume it's nothing. I met her eyes. I'm done assuming anything is nothing. After they left, Lily came quietly into the living room. Are they going to arrest him? She asked. Not yet, I said gently. But they know who he is now. That's something. She sat beside me on the couch. We didn't say much. Sometimes silence is the only thing that fits in a moment. Later that evening, Jonathan finally arrived. He looked more rumpled than usual, tie loosened, worry lines deepened. You all right? He asked as soon as he stepped in. We're standing, I answered. That's a start. He sank into a chair and rubbed his forehead. I spoke with the sheriff's office. They think this Whitaker might be connected to Tom's business. A contractor of some sort. Doesn't have a clean record. I folded my arms. So Tom's sending people now? Jonathan paused. We can't prove he sent him, but the timing isn't a coincidence. That man didn't just happen down this road. He opened his briefcase and pulled out another stack of papers. You need to see this, he said. What now? I asked, bracing myself. It's about Tom's finances, he replied. The deeper we looked, the more we found irregularities. He slid a page across the table. Some of the money in his business accounts came from loans taken out in both your names. Loans you never signed for. My jaw tightened. So he forged my name. Jonathan nodded grimly. That's one word for it. The other word is fraud. I stared at the document. My signature, or rather, a clumsy imitation of it. Good Lord, I whispered. He really thought I'd never find out. Jonathan leaned forward. This changes the nature of the case. It's not just divorce and custody anymore. We're talking potential criminal charges, financial misconduct, maybe more. I let the weight of that settle in. For years, Tom had used money to control me, to keep me quiet, to make me feel small. Now that same money trail might be the very thing that brings him down. Evelyn, Jonathan said carefully, if we pursue this, things are going to get uglier before they get better. Tom will panic. He'll lash out. You've already seen the start of it. Are you prepared for what comes next? I looked toward the hallway, where Lily's bedroom door stood slightly open. I could hear her humming under her breath as she colored, trying to create some kind of normal in all this chaos. I turned back to Jonathan. I'm prepared to make sure my daughter doesn't grow up thinking this is what love looks like, I said. If that means things get ugly before they get better, then so be it. He nodded slowly, a hint of respect softening his features. All right then. We move forward. He packed up the papers and stood. Tomorrow morning, I'll file the fraud complaint. That will force a financial audit. Once that happens, Tom won't be able to hide a single thing. I felt a strange mix of dread and relief. And when he finds out? I asked. Jonathan met my eyes. He'll fight. He'll threaten. He might even try to twist the story and make you the villain. But the documents don't lie, Evelyn, even if he does. After he left, the cabin felt quieter than usual. I walked through each room, checking locks, closing curtains, listening to the settling creaks of the wooden floor. Lily fell asleep with her sketchbook open beside her, a half-finished drawing of a house on the page. Not our old house, not the cabin. Something in between, a place that didn't exist yet. I went back to the living room, sat on the couch, and let the darkness outside keep me company. The fear was there, yes, but it wasn't in charge. Determination had taken the wheel. I was just about to turn off the lamp and head to bed when my phone buzzed again. This time, it wasn't a text. It was a voicemail alert. The caller ID showed Tom's number. I pressed play, held the phone to my ear, and listened. His voice came through low, tight, and furious. Evelyn, he said, I just got a very interesting call from the bank. And from that lawyer of yours. You think you're clever. You think you can ruin me." He laughed then, a short, cracked sound. "You have no idea what you've started. But I promise you this." There was a pause, and when he spoke again, his voice was colder than I'd ever heard it. "By the time I'm done, you won't just lose me. You'll lose everything. And, sweetheart," what he didn't know, not yet, was that the only person standing on the edge of losing everything was him. I replayed that voicemail 3 times, not because I needed to hear the words again, but because I wanted to study his voice, the tone, the cracks, the fury trying to hide the panic. Back in my day, we used to say you can tell more about a person from how they talk than what they actually say. And Tom sounded like a man standing on the edge of a cliff, shouting threats because he could feel the ground sliding out from under him. The next morning, Lily woke early and padded into the living room, rubbing her eyes. She sat next to me on the couch, resting her head on my arm. "Mom, is Dad mad again?" she asked softly. I kissed the top of her head. "He's mad at himself," I whispered. "But people like him don't know how to aim anger at themselves, so they point it at everyone else." She nodded slowly, thinking deeply the way she always did. "Are we still safe here?" I looked toward the window, where the mountains stood tall and steady. "Yes, sweetheart, and we're getting safer every day." Around mid-morning, Jonathan called. "Evelyn, the financial audit has been formally approved," he said. "That means the investigators will be combing through Tom's accounts, loans, statements, everything." I closed my eyes. "Good. One more thing," he continued. "I also received confirmation that some of those forged signatures go back several years. This isn't a recent bad decision. It's a pattern. A long one." I felt something shift in my chest. Not relief, not anger. Something like clarity. "So he's been building this house of cards for a long time," I said. "Exactly," Jonathan replied. "And you're the one person who can knock it down." We met Jonathan later that afternoon at a small diner in town, a place where my former students used to gather for milkshakes after football games. Lily sat in the booth next to me, drawing quietly in her notebook while Jonathan spread papers across the table. "The next court date is in 3 weeks," he said. "By then, the audit should have preliminary findings. And when Tom realizes he's about to be exposed, he may escalate." I raised an eyebrow. "Jonathan, honey, escalate from what? He already sent a man to stare through my windows like a wolf looking at prey." Jonathan gave a small, grim smile. "Escalate legally, publicly, emotionally. He's going to spin a story to save face." I sipped my coffee, thinking. He already started. Folks whispered at the store. Lily looked up suddenly. "People said you were unstable, Mom. I heard Mrs. Turner tell someone." My heart tightened. "Sweetheart, when people don't know the truth, they repeat the loudest voice. And your father's voice, it's always been loud." Lily leaned against me, and I kissed her forehead. But loud doesn't mean right. When we left the diner, I noticed a familiar SUV parked across the street. Sleek, black, windows tinted. Tom's. He wasn't inside, but the message was clear. "I can see you." I put my hand on Lily's back and guided her to the car. We didn't say anything until we were safely inside, doors locked. "Mom," she whispered, "what does he want?" I stared straight ahead. "Control," I said. "And he's losing it." That night, after Lily fell asleep, I stepped onto the porch again. The air was cool, carrying the smell of pine and earth. I wrapped my arms around myself and let the silence settle. Everything was shifting. The legal case, the town's whispers, Tom's desperation. The pieces of the story were moving, realigning, revealing a picture I hadn't fully seen before. My father hadn't just protected me financially. He'd left me a map, a shield, and maybe even a weapon. As I stood there, listening to the wind in the trees, my phone buzzed again. For a split second, I braced myself. Another threat? Another unknown number? But when I looked at the screen, my heart stopped for an entirely different reason. It wasn't Tom. It wasn't the unknown sender. It was a message from someone I hadn't heard from in years. Someone who knew things about Tom I didn't. Someone who had left town abruptly. Someone whose disappearance never made sense. The message read, Evelyn, we need to talk. I should have warned you years ago. And sweetheart, that was the moment I realized Tom's darkness didn't begin with me. It began long before our marriage, and someone out there held the missing piece. When I saw the name attached to that message, I felt the kind of jolt that travels all the way down your spine and settles in your knees. Michael Reyes. A name I hadn't spoken out loud in over a decade. A name Tom never wanted me to say, never wanted me to ask about, never wanted me to remember. Back in my day, we used to say that when someone vanishes from a story too neatly, too suddenly, too quietly, it means they didn't vanish. They were pushed. I stared at the message for a long time, the porch light flickering above me, moths tapping their small, desperate wings against the bulb. Michael Reyes had been Tom's business partner long before Tom married me. Young, bright, ambitious, a man with too much hope and not enough armor. I remembered his smile, soft and earnest. I remembered how he vanished after some financial misunderstanding, a phrase Tom used with such bored authority you'd think he was discussing a failed bake sale. And just like that, Michael was gone. No farewell, no explanation, no forwarding address. Tom always shut the conversation down with a tight jaw and a colder voice. Stop asking, Evelyn. It has nothing to do with you. And now, after all these years, his name lit up my phone with a warning. We need to talk. My heartbeat thudded heavy against my ribs. The next morning, I made appointment-level coffee, the strong kind I only brewed when I needed to think sharply. Lily sat at the table eating toast, yawning between bites. Mom, she said, watching me stir my cup. You're doing that face again. I blinked. What face? She shrugged. The face you do when you're trying not to tell me something. Kids, sweetheart, they see everything. It's nothing bad, I said gently. Just something from the past that's coming back up. She nodded, trusting me, though her eyes lingered on me longer than usual. I called Jonathan first. He answered sounding like he'd slept 3 hours at most. Evelyn? What happened? I took a breath. I got a message last night, from Michael Reyes. Silence crackled on the line. Then, good Lord. You know the name, I said. Everyone who ever worked with Tom knows the name, he replied quietly. Michael didn't disappear. He fled. And I don't use that word lightly. That made my fingertips go cold. Why? Jonathan hesitated, then sighed. Because he found out something about Tom's early business dealings, something that put him in a dangerous position, something that, if true, makes what Tom did to you look like child's play. I gripped the phone tighter. Jonathan, what did he find? I don't know, he said. Michael never talked to me. But the way he left, overnight, without notice, and the look in his eyes that last week, he trailed off. He was scared, Evelyn. Truly scared. Lily tugged my sleeve gently. Mom, can we go for a walk later? In a bit, sweetheart, I murmured, kissing her forehead. After we hung up, I finally typed back to Michael. Where can we meet? He replied immediately. Not in town. Too risky. Do you know the overlook on Blue Ridge Parkway, mile marker 241? I knew it. Everyone in Asheville did. Quiet, isolated, with a view that made you forget your troubles for a moment. Yes, I wrote. Tomorrow, 3 p.m., come alone. And don't tell Tom's lawyer. Tom's lawyer, not Jonathan, not my lawyer. That detail didn't sit right with me. Not one bit. All day, I felt tension humming under my skin like a low electrical current. Lily and I walked the trail behind the cabin, the leaves crunching under our shoes. She talked about schoolwork, about the book she was reading, about a stray dog she hoped to see again near the grocery store. I listened. I nodded. But part of me was somewhere else entirely. In the past, in memories I hadn't touched in years, in the space where unanswered questions had been quietly gathering dust. That night, while Lily slept curled under her quilt, I sat on the porch again, turning the message from Michael over and over in my mind. Why now? Why contact me after all these years? Why mention warning me? What exactly did he think I needed protecting from? Just before dawn, as the sky was turning that pale gray blue, Jonathan texted, I found something. We need to talk. Urgent. I met him at the diner before opening hours, the smell of fresh biscuits drifting from the kitchen. He looked tired, but not from lack of sleep, from knowledge. Heavy, sharp knowledge. He slid a single sheet of paper across the table toward me. A name, a bank, a transaction, 14 years old. I frowned. What am I looking at? Jonathan tapped the page. This is why Michael disappeared. I leaned closer. The transaction was for a large sum of money, transferred out of a business account Michael and Tom shared, sent to an offshore account belonging to someone named Dale Whitaker. My breath caught. Whitaker? The man who watched the cabin? Yes, Jonathan said. He's been tied to Tom for a long time, much longer than we knew. I clenched my jaw. So Tom paid this man? Jonathan shook his head slowly. No, Evelyn, that's not the shocking part. His finger traced down the paper to the signature authorizing the transfer. It wasn't Tom's name. It wasn't Michael's. It was mine. A forged version of it, shaky, uneven, but mine. I don't understand, I whispered. Why forge my name? Jonathan exhaled. Because Michael found evidence Tom was laundering money, and when he confronted him, Tom planted this forged signature to frame Michael, make it look like Michael stole money with your help. He used your name as the knife. My hands trembled for the first time in weeks. So Michael wasn't running from guilt. No, Jonathan said softly. He was running from Tom. I felt something sharp and bitter rise in my chest. Betrayal, layered on betrayal. Going back years before I even knew there was a war being waged behind my back. Tom hadn't just lied to me. He'd used me, weaponized my name, my trust, my signature. Evelyn, Jonathan said, leaning forward. Meeting Michael could give us everything we need to prove Tom's crimes, but it could also put you in danger. Men desperate to hide secrets do desperate things. I nodded slowly. I'm meeting him. If there's truth that can set Lily free from him, I'll walk straight into it. Jonathan stared at me for a moment, then nodded. Then I'll be nearby, not visible, but close. That afternoon, I told Lily I needed to run an errand alone. She looked uneasy but didn't argue. Come back soon, she whispered. I promised her I would. At 3 p.m., I stood at the Blue Ridge Parkway overlook, the mountains stretching like waves beneath me, wind tugging at my hair. I waited 5 minutes. 10. 15. Then footsteps behind me. I turned, and there he was, older, thinner, eyes shadowed, but unmistakably Michael. Evelyn, he said, voice trembling. I'm so sorry. I should have told you everything years ago. He stepped closer and lowered his voice. But there's something you still don't know. Something Tom hid, even from me. I opened my mouth to ask what, but before a single sound left my lips, a sharp crack echoed through the mountains. A gunshot. Michael's eyes widened. His body jerked forward, and he collapsed at my feet. The sound of that gunshot ripped through the mountain so sharply that for a second I didn't even register it as real. It was like the world froze. The wind stopped breathing. The birds stopped calling. Even my own heartbeat seemed to pause in my chest. Michael's body hit the ground with a heavy, lifeless thud, dust rising around him in a slow, awful cloud. I stood there, paralyzed, my hands trembling at my sides. Part of my mind screamed to run, part of it screamed to help him, and part of it screamed Lily's name over and over again. Michael! My voice came out broken. I dropped to my knees beside him. His shirt was already darkening, blood seeping between my fingers as I pressed a hand against his shoulder. No, honey. Stay with me. Stay with me. His eyes fluttered. Pain, panic, recognition. Evelyn, he whispered, and a thin trail of blood traced down the corner of his mouth. I didn't think he'd... He gasped, struggling for air. You have to fin... Another crack echoed through the air. Not a gunshot this time, but the sound of a car door slamming somewhere beyond the overlook, hidden by the bend in the road. My whole body stiffened. Someone was out there. Someone who'd followed him. Someone who'd pulled that trigger. Someone who wasn't finished. Michael, I whispered, leaning close. Who did this? Tell me. His hand gripped mine, weak, shaking. "Run," he rasped. "Run, Evelyn. He's not alone." And then, his fingers loosened, his chest stilled. I pressed my hand against his cheek, tears blurring the edges of the world. "Bless your heart," I whispered, my voice cracking. "I'm so sorry." Instinct snapped back into me like a rubber band pulled too far. I scrambled to my feet, scanning the tree line, the road, the shadows stretching across the pavement. The overlook was too open, too exposed. If whoever fired that shot could see me before, they could see me now. I grabbed my phone with shaking hands and called Jonathan. He picked up immediately. "Evelyn, where are you? I saw your car." "Jonathan," I breathed. "He's been shot. Michael, he's—" "Get out of there!" Jonathan cut in sharply. "Get to your car now. I'm close. Don't wait for me. Go." I ran. I'm not a runner. Age has a way of settling into your knees whether you invite it or not. But fear is a strange kind of fuel, honey. It burns through age, fatigue, everything. My feet pounded against the pavement as I rushed to the car. I fumbled with the keys, got inside, locked the doors, and started the engine with hands that didn't feel like my own. In the rearview mirror, a dark SUV rolled slowly around the curve of the overlook. Not speeding, not chasing, just appearing. Like it wanted me to see it. Like it was saying, "I'm here." I hit the gas and flew down the parkway, breath shallow, heart hammering against my ribs. Every curve in the road felt like a trap. Every shadow felt like a threat. Through the panic, one thought repeated in my mind like a broken hymn. "Lily, Lily, get back to Lily." Jonathan called again as I sped through the mountain road. "Did you see the shooter?" "No," I whispered, my throat tight. "But someone was there." "Someone followed him. Did you get a plate number?" "No." "Color? Make?" "SUV, dark, tinted." I heard him curse softly. "Evelyn, listen to me. You need to go straight to the cabin. Don't stop. Don't talk to anyone. I'll meet you there with the sheriff." My chest tightened. "The sheriff?" "Yes," Jonathan said firmly. "Because after what happened today, this isn't just a divorce case. This is attempted murder. Maybe worse." The drive back to the cabin felt like the longest of my life. Every car behind me made me stiffen. Every bend in the road made me tighten my grip on the steering wheel. When I pulled onto the gravel path leading to the cabin, my eyes immediately scanned the area. Lily was inside, safe, unaware, and the thought of her not knowing what danger had just brushed us sent a tremor through my whole being. I barely had time to step out of the car before Lily ran out onto the porch. "Mom!" she cried. "You were gone so long. Are you okay? Why are you shaking?" I wrapped my arms around her, holding her tight, maybe too tight. "I'm fine, sweetheart," I whispered into her hair. "I'm right here." Before I could gather myself, Jonathan's car pulled up behind mine, followed by a sheriff's vehicle. Deputy Harris stepped out, her expression serious. "Mrs. Carter," she called, "we got your message. Tell us exactly what happened." Inside the cabin, I explained everything. The shot, the SUV, the way the sound echoed through the mountains. Lily sat quietly on the couch, hugging a pillow, her eyes locked on me with fear she was trying hard not to show. When I finished, Harris let out a slow breath. "Mrs. Carter," she said, "this is no longer just harassment. We have to treat this as a coordinated attack." A chill rippled through me. "Coordinated?" "Someone wanted that man silenced," Harris said. "And they might have wanted to send you a message too." Jonathan added, "Michael had information about Tom's old business crimes. Enough to bury him. Someone knew he was meeting you." I pressed a hand to my chest. "Good Lord, what have we stepped into?" Jonathan's voice softened. "The truth. And the truth has enemies." Lily looked up at me, her voice trembling. "Mom, are we in danger?" I sat beside her, pulling her close. "We're going to be okay, I promise you." I wanted that promise to be true. I needed it to be true. Deputy Harris stood. "We'll put surveillance on the cabin. And Evelyn, don't go anywhere alone, not until we know who we're dealing with." I nodded, but inside, my mind was spinning. Michael had died with a sentence unfinished. Something Tom hid even from him. Something bigger than forged signatures and fake loans. As the sheriff's car pulled away and the cabin quieted, my phone buzzed again. A new message. Unknown number. Now you know what happens to people who talk. My breath caught. Then another message came through. Just 2 words. You're next. And sweetheart, that was the moment I realized this wasn't about divorce anymore. This was survival. The cabin had never felt so small. The walls seemed to lean inward. The shadows felt thicker. The silence between each distant sound felt like something holding its breath. For the first time since all this began, I kept the lights on through the night. Lily slept curled against me, one arm draped over my waist, as if her body knew something her mind didn't yet have words for. I held her close, smoothing her hair and whispering prayers into the dark. Prayers for strength, for clarity, for courage I knew I would need very soon. By morning, I had reached the point every woman pushed into a corner reaches eventually. The moment when fear solidifies into resolve. I stood in front of the kitchen sink, looking out at the fog sliding between the trees, and I felt something settle inside me. I wasn't going to run. I wasn't going to hide. I wasn't going to wait for Tom or his people to make the next move. It was time for this story to end. Not with vengeance, but with truth. Hard, messy, unglamorous truth. Jonathan arrived just after sunrise, still in the suit he'd worn the day before. His hair was mussed. His tie was loose. He had been up all night. "Evelyn," he said in a low voice, "I spoke to the district attorney. They're opening a full investigation. Fraud, forgery, financial misconduct, and now attempted murder." I wrapped my hands around my coffee mug, absorbing every word. "What do they need from me?" He hesitated. "Everything. Every message, every detail, every memory, and they'll need you to testify." "I will," I said, without a single tremor. "I'm done being quiet." Before Jonathan could answer, headlights appeared through the trees. 2 police vehicles. Deputy Harris stepped out, her face grim but steady. "Mrs. Carter," she said, "we need you to come with us. We're issuing a protective order, but we found something you need to see." My heartbeat thudded once, heavy and sharp. "What is it?" "Please," she said, "just come." Lily clutched my arm. "Mom, can I come?" I kneeled in front of her and took her hands. "Sweetheart, you stay here with Deputy Collins. He'll stay inside the cabin with you. I won't be gone long." Tears gathered in her eyes, but she nodded bravely. "Promise?" "I promise," I whispered, kissing her forehead. Jonathan drove with me in the passenger seat, following the sheriff's cruiser down the winding mountain road. Harris didn't speak through the radio, and the silence was its own warning. The drive felt long and short at the same time, like the kind of road where something waits for you at the end, whether you're ready or not. We eventually pulled into a clearing near an old storage facility on the outskirts of Asheville. Yellow tape stretched around one of the units. Officers moved quietly. A detective approached us, holding a folder. "Mrs. Carter," he said, "we executed a warrant this morning on a property connected to a man named Dale Whitaker." My blood chilled at the name. He continued, "Inside the unit, we found documents linking Whitaker to financial transfers made under your forged signature. We also found surveillance photos of you, of your car, of the cabin." I swallowed slowly. So he was watching us. Yes, and more than that. We found communication logs between Whitaker and Thomas Carter. Jonathan exhaled sharply. "That's it," he said. "That ties them together." But the detective wasn't done. "Mrs. Carter, we also found a printed email draft, unsent, likely saved to send later." He handed it to me. The words blurred for a second before my eyes focused. "If you don't fix this, I'll tell her. All of it. What we did back then. What you forced me to do. What happened to Michael. I'm done covering for you. Signed by Dale Whitaker." My breath froze in my chest. Jonathan leaned over my shoulder. Good Lord. I stared at the paper. Tom wasn't just paying Whitaker. He was controlling him. The detective nodded. And it appears Whitaker was ready to talk, which puts motive on both sides. Both sides. Meaning Tom might not have been the one who pulled the trigger. Meaning Tom might not have ordered it. Meaning Tom might have simply pushed a dangerous man too far for too long. meaning I was standing in the middle of a fire neither of them could control anymore. Jonathan spoke quietly. "Evelyn, this is bigger than we thought. Much bigger." Deputy Harris stepped forward. "Mrs. Carter, we're bringing Tom in for questioning. Today." My breath quickened. Harris's eyes softened. "You won't need to see him. Not yet." But I shook my head. "I want to be there." Jonathan stepped closer. "Evelyn, honey, are you sure?" I lifted my chin. "Yes, I'm not afraid of him anymore." The interrogation room was cold, sterile. 2 chairs, a metal table, a pane of one-way glass. I stood behind it with Jonathan and Harris, watching as Tom was led inside in handcuffs. He looked smaller than I remembered, tired, angry, but not powerful. He sat. He glanced at the mirror, at us. He couldn't see me, but he sensed me. His jaw tightened. As the detective began questioning him about the accounts, the forgery, the payments to Whitaker, Tom didn't shout. He didn't roar. He didn't threaten. He lied, smoothly, calmly, like he'd practiced those lies all his life. But the truth was bigger than him now. When they showed him the photos, he flinched. When they showed him the email draft, he paled. When they mentioned Michael's name, he looked away. And in that moment, that one tiny flickering moment, he knew he had lost. Not to me, not to the law, but to the truth. Later, when it was finally over, I stepped outside into the bright afternoon sun. The weight I'd been carrying for years, cracked, not gone, but cracking, light slipping through. Lily ran across the yard and into my arms. I lifted her, held her tight, breathed her in. "Mom," she whispered, "is it really over?" I pressed my cheek to hers. "The worst is over," I said softly. "But healing, that's the part we build ourselves." I looked out toward the trees, toward the life ahead of us. Smaller, quieter, but free, truly free. And to you, listening to me now, I'll say this, sweetheart. Pain can shape you. Fear can shrink you. But truth? Truth sets your feet back on the ground. Now tell me, what city are you watching from? I'd love to know.